it would simply mean plugging up the outlet, plugging up the ditch, so the marsh would fill with water, and that would not take more than a year or two. Once the marsh is filled with water, some of the original vegetation, which is still in the soil, will begin to reestablish itself.
We know where these drained wetlands are, we know how to restore them, and all we lack is the will as a society to decide how many of them we need to restore and where we're going to do that to benefit not only wildlife but also clean up water and reduce flooding problems and things like that. And I think we have the technology to help us make informed decisions now so that we can pick and choose and say, if we're only going to restore 10 wetlands in this particular area, which 10 should we restore out of the 1,000 that might be there? We can pick and choose the ones that do the most environmental good, clean up the water the best, will raise the most ducks, will help other non-game birds, will help flood control.
By blaming farmers for things, you're putting the blame on 2% of the people. And the other 98% feel real good about themselves because the farmers are the ones that are guilty of all that. Until we all get the idea that I have a part to play in this, it probably won't get any better.
They're more than willing to listen. What they're really looking at is the bottom line, how they can make money off of a piece of ground that they have. They're not out to ruin anything. They're not out to destroy any part of the environment. What they're trying to do is make the land pay for itself.
My hope over the next 10 years is that we can work together smartly to figure out how we can meet the dual needs of agricultural production and conservation in this landscape.
It's not farmers that I have trouble with. It's the government that I have trouble with. Give me the right program. Give me the right program that makes sense, that pays farmers enough in order to make ends meet, and they will do what's right.
There's several elderly farmers out there that will never forget that. You know, I actually got paid to do this. I did not do anything wrong. And now they kind of have the temperament where now you're trying to blame me that a lot of the problems are my fault, even though the government paid me to do them.
So many times we want to personalize the whole thing. You know, it's your fault. You're a farmer, and so you screwed this up. My water's dirty. I don't have any wildlife left. You know, hey, we did that as a society, and we're still doing it to this day. And it all boils down to money.
In a state made prosperous and strong by agriculture, no one wants to hold farmers or any group responsible for dirty water, floods, or declining bird populations. The real culprit is a body of law slanted toward drainage and unready to commit itself to cleaning up the state's water and restoring the state's wetlands. The Minnesota Wetlands Conservation Act, passed in 1991, was lauded as a positive step for restoration. However, the law exempts wetlands smaller than 2 acres. It's these smaller, ephemeral wetlands that are most important to waterfowl and flood control, and most troubling to crop production. This is just one example. There are several others.
Right now, farmers are paid by how many acres they farm and how many bushels they raise. And that's a defeatist way to pay people if you're concerned about the environment.
I don't think anybody is advocating or suggesting that we're going to go in and restore all of the wetlands that were drained in Minnesota. That's just not realistic, and it's probably not desirable.
The status quo of farm programs is not giving us the benefits that we need.
We as taxpayers have to demand more out of that farm program than what we are getting. What happens is that so many times conservation gets thrown the bone. I mean, you know, we're going to spend $200 million on the commodity end, and we'll throw 8, 9, 10 million towards conservation to keep those people happy.
I think we have to realize that we need to spend our dollars a little more wisely and look for permanent change and permanent restoration of some of these habitats rather than the Band-Aid approaches of some of the past farm programs.
Today, the picture has changed somewhat in that more and more people are beginning to understand that these marshes, biodiverse places in general, are extremely valuable to human beings.
Today, dealing with the decisions of 100 years ago, when a whole different mindset, a whole different understanding of the environment, we're working now with biological boundaries, where back then we were working with man-made boundaries, and trying to redevelop things that have been gone for 100 years.
We need to balance the rights and needs of the individual with the rights and needs of everybody else, the rest of society, so that if I can do something to my land, for example, that benefits me, but it hurts 5 other people, where do we draw the line? And that's a very difficult, very, very difficult question.
But the hard part is trying to get it through the political system. And of course, all the special interests that are out there fueling the decisions that are made in Washington through the Farm Bill. I mean, you know, and we all know who those people are.
Maybe the minister has to curse the people on Sunday and the banker has to educate them on Monday. And if you can get the minister and the banker saying the same message and then throw the government in on Tuesday, then maybe in some kind of odd combination that produces that mixture of model, habit, and so on.
Whatever my decision is to do on this farm, and that's whether I use the plow or whether I use the chisel plow, that decision doesn't only affect this farm. It goes beyond this farm.
The reinvested Minnesota license plate. It's a crying shame when, you know, all the cars on the road ought to be reinvested Minnesota license plate. Really, it's $30. I mean, come on, you know, it's a half a tank of gas. It's just going to have to take more commitment by people that say they like these things.
We need people to be informed. We need people to be engaged with the political process, whatever their viewpoint. I mean, they might think precisely the opposite of what I think. If I come to the table and they come to the table, I think we'll end up with a better product at the end.
We found that the greatest restoration projects are ones that are grassroots, local driven. They've gotten state organizations on board. They've gotten the federal organizations on board with it. And it's a collaboration of local, state, and federal that actually creates a successful restoration project.
But if you won't buy their product, unless to get that long ear, they've got to use fertilizer. And to eliminate the worm in the end, they got to use insecticide. Now I said, if you won't buy their little ear, then who's asking for the big ear? I said, you can't put all the blame on the farmer because you won't buy his product unless he does that.
Each of these ideas stresses the need for collaboration. Restoring wetlands in Minnesota requires that we all do our part, farmer and consumer, voter and legislator.
I think the lesson is it did work many, many years ago to do it simply. You know, people raised livestock, they were diverse, the manure went back on the land, commercial fertilizers were not necessary, pesticides were not necessary. Once you have a healthy ecosystem, you can cut down on the pesticide use. Once you have a healthy ecosystem, you can cut down on the fertilizer use. If you recycle natural systems the way nature does, you can cut back. What else can I do? You know, I've been working on this so damn long, but I'm still not sick of it. I'm still persistent. I'm not going to give up.